Alright, welcome to Breathing Underwater's Musicast. Before we begin this episode, I just wanted to extend a heartfelt apology about the audio quality in this episode. I was having some glitchy input device and it's all fuzzy. However, I feel that the voices come through clear enough and our conversation was astounding enough to not scrap it. So thanks for listening, and I apologize again, and I will get this fixed as soon as possible. Welcome to Breathing Underwater's Musicast. This is episode number 12. I have with me on the line, as usual, Dave. Say hi, Dave.
Yeah. Hi.
I guess that was confusing because I actually have two Daves online. To avoid confusion, we're gonna refer to our usual Dave as Dave and our guest Dave as Beckner. This is going to be a little bit out of format for our usual episodes because I just wanted to give a chance for Beckner to rant and rave a little bit about all things technical related because Dave and I are not as in tune with what's going on behind the scenes, so to speak. But before we get into all that, well, first I think we should start with just a little history, just to give our listeners a chance to understand the story there. I always do that when we have guests on. So I think that Beckner, you and I met at McDonald's, right? I was 15 and you were probably what, 18 or 19?
Probably 17.
So, but we met at McDonald's. I was a freshman and you were a senior, but I don't think we really actually knew each other in school. But we met at McDonald's and then we became friends.
I definitely remember seeing you in the halls and stuff like that. So yeah, that makes sense.
I remember. I think I had started working there towards the end of the year when you were about to graduate, and I saw you a couple times, and then you were already out of school at that point. Became friends working at McDonald's. We had even though we listened to different kinds of music, we had a similar bonding over being passionate fans of music, I'd say.
And rock and roll.
And over time, you kind of, you definitely influenced some of our musical tastes. Like you got us into Super Drag and some of the local scene, like Poplar Ridge and Callow and Weezer. Yeah, you were definitely the proponent that got us into Weezer. You made me my first Weezer mixtape. And yeah, so we did a lot of hanging out. Then our mutual friend Chris, another Chris, that not the one that's been on the podcast, had a car, so we were able to bum rides off of him and go to like the Moldy Oldie record store and other such amazing hangouts around where we grew up. And we've also had the privilege of seeing like Black Sabbath together, and we went to some other shows, didn't we?
I went with you and Chris actually to see Thursday. Dan and Dave, we're always into metal and things like that. And I was, I started out with music a little bit more, I guess, I don't know, traditionally or whatever, but it wasn't necessarily traditional for like 1996 for somebody to start out with buying CDs. And it was all, what I got into the Beatles. And, the Beatles were, just totally like, they just blew my mind. But then it was also like a weird thing because the Beatles are so mainstream, but they're also they have a cult thing there too because there's so much stuff to get into that there remains obscure things. So it's like cool, and yet at the same time it's underground, and like that's the best way. That's the best thing that music could possibly be. Like is like you could feel like you're part of something that everybody knows about. Like so, and then it lets you join. Like so, from that jumping off point, I was able to like get into other, plenty of other stuff, and like. To this day, like that's like my backbone and my foundation of like music listening. I've certainly, have dabbled into, heavier music. I certainly, I remember I bought, Pantera Reinventing the Steel like probably the week it came out. And
I didn't know that.
And yeah, I did. And I was, I like for a while there, I listened to that like a lot, and it was really that was cool to me because it was like that album I got into while that band still existed. And then I kept meaning, it was sad because I kept meaning to go back and like actually back in the days when people would actually buy CDs in the store. I kept meaning to go back and buy more Pantera CDs. And then, then Dimebag, was killed. So it felt like, oh, I'm a giant a-hole, because if I go and go buy these CDs, then I'm going to feel like a bandwagon.
Yeah.
So then after that, it was like, well, I kind of need to put that on the shelf for a bit, because even though I'm sure I will like it, I can't really, because it's just not right. So that became just a slight dead end for me. And then, but I was saying, I got into like heavier music, just from the Beatles, and they certainly, they certainly dabbled themselves. If you listen to, Helter Skelter from the White Album and I Want You from Abbey Road, those are heavy, heavy songs. At least for the time. Helter.
My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Yeah, they musically, they really have amazing guitar solos. And I was going to say, Revolution. I can't even really fathom what it would have been like to hear in 1968 that single coming on the radio, because that was like the loudest, most distorted, like rudest thing that anybody had probably ever heard, and then with a political message on top of it. And they deliberately mixed that thing to just be louder than anything that anybody had ever heard before. It was just a deliberate wrong thing, because they knew it didn't matter. Because no matter what they really put out on a 7-inch single, it was going to get played on the radio and become probably a huge hit. So it was important for them to cabinet those songs like Revolution. To go back to your guys' first podcast, and you kind of defined what you guys were into and what the podcast were going to be about, was like, you said, quote, heavier music that has edge. And I just wanted to say that, to me, all music can have a certain heaviness to it, like an importance. Like if heavy doesn't necessarily mean distortion, like it just simply means, a realness to it. And yeah, there's certainly certain fakeness, that's in rock and roll too, and that can be great too. Like everybody knows that David Bowie was play acting, and those songs are so cool because the play acting is part of it, and everybody knows that all the glam stuff and everything that's just makeup, and Alice Cooper obviously had a certain theatricality to it, but that's also heavy music in a different way. And then the heavy music that has edge, and what the first thing I thought about as a direct antithesis of this is what you guys mean by heavy music that has edge. Something like the Carpenters, where it's completely soft pop, but it's absolutely devastating music, because and then the reality of it is that she just winds up dying because she's a bulimic, and that's all projected in the music, and it's all there. You hear it after the fact. Whenever these tragedies happen, it's all there. It's all there in her voice, but nobody knew then.
Yeah.
So that was all I wanted to get at when it came to heavy music or whatever. So if you wanted to get into your topics, I guess we could do that.
Well, that's a great point, and I think that's a good kind of way to keep things in check, is that you don't always have to be talking about something like angry or aggressive to be talking about heavy music. I mean, is anything with heavy emotion, or
right,
heavy feelings, or a heavy fullness to it makes it.
And that's why I remember we've had conversations in the past about how when emo happened and when emo became a term, it didn't make sense to me. Like all of a sudden, music has emotion.
Right.
I don't get that, because at the same time that emo was the biggest thing happening around 2000, my favorite album and one of my top probably 3 albums now to this day is the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. And if there isn't any, that's probably the most emotional, honest album that anybody's ever heard from somebody who's 24 years old. Brian Wilson was recording that stuff. So if you want emo music, look no further than the Beach Boys, I say.
Oh, emo was kind of as a supposed what people call emo. A lot actually some really good artists get lumped into that, but sort of like this indulgent, melodramatic kind of attitude where they kind of indulge in that emotion.
Right, and they certainly play it up. you know, and then, you know, immature listeners in some fashion, like fall for it a little bit, and they're like, oh, you know, but that's the kind of stuff that's been going on for years. Like, I mean, there's, what's the name of there's some book by this French guy named Goethe, but it's about this kid who winds up killing himself at the end of the book, and this is like, you know, 300 years ago or whatever, but the kid's just totally emo because he was obsessed with a girl and he wanted to kill himself over it. The Life and Times of Young Werther, I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
But yeah, emo has always existed for, you know, people that choose to be dramatic when it comes to things.
Well, I think it originally did kind of start like the roots of what is considered emo now started as like a post. It was like when hardcore music started really becoming more introspective and less tough guy, less like punky, and it was more based around, you know, like your traditional love song or breakup song kind of, you know, moray, and then
right. It became marketable.
But yeah, but then that's what happened almost immediately. Was that then it became like a commodity as opposed to like a real genre, and I mean, and that's something that we've touched on that before, Dave and I, when we talked about that Metal Evolution shows. He talked, you know, movements that started out as like a rebellion or like an alteration to a current mainstream movement, and then they became mainstream, and then there was another movement that was a rebellion against that. I think that happened to emo. It like
once it gets a name, it's dead.
Yeah, exactly.
The name comes from the record label, and the record labels need to give it a name so that they can sell it. And if you can't sell it, you're not getting signed. So
Yeah.
it's like the same thing happened to Nirvana and grunge. Like as soon as Nirvana happened, and they're like, oh, we're going to call this grunge, and then we're going to sign all these bands from Seattle.
Yep.
You know, so
You've already touched on it, but we always like to give our guests a chance to your top favorite artist, album.
well, I already mentioned, you know, my absolute favorite album of all time, and it's a lazy pick because it's the Beatles' White Album, and the Beatles' White Album is huge, and everything's on it, you know. So it's just like it's all there. It'll always all, you know. It's like it'll always all be there, and so if you just, you know, if you want to hear a little bit of everything, rock and roll, just put on the White Album, and it's great, and the songs are amazing, and there's, you know, there's almost like there's no words to really describe it, which is why the Beatles gave it the cover they did. It's everything and nothing at the same time. You know, white is, you know, is oversaturation. It's the absolutely correct message that they gave with that album cover. Yeah, number 2 is certainly Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. That's just an amazing production and a record, and the lyrics. It's just perfect. I can listen to that almost every day, and I have for a few years there. I wouldn't say a few years, a couple of years there, listened to it almost every day. Number 3 is this album by a little band called Queen, called Sheer Heart Attack. It was their third album from 1973, and that's got, you know, Killer Queen, Sheer Heart Attack's not on that. It's Killer Queen, Stone Cold Crazy, Now I'm Here. It's just song after song of like amazingness and weirdness too. There's, you know, In the Lap of the Gods, just like slowed down weirdo vocal over top of like a track that's actually like correctly in tune, but the vocal is slowed down to match the tempo of the thing. It's just a nutty manic glam rock like masterpiece, essentially. Like really cool guitar tunes from Brian May, the whole thing. And then Big Star, number 1 record. Big Star is this band from Memphis. One of the Alex Chilton and Chris Bell were the 2 main guys. Alex Chilton, before he was in Big Star, was in the Box Tops. Had a number 1 hit in the summer of 1967 with a song called The Letter that everybody knows. Got me a ticket for an airplane and got time to take a fast train. That's pretty much, you know, almost the whole song. It's only 2 minutes. But they went on to form this band Big Star that, you know, if you haven't heard of them, it's a very good reason, because they absolutely, at the time, they absolutely went nowhere, and the record label was having serious money issues. They were tied in with the Stax, the black label that was in Memphis. All their songs, they went on to become immensely influential, and like many other bands covered their songs. And, you know, at some point, you know, 10, 12 years ago, somebody said, you need to check out Big Star. And they're, they say it's power pop or whatever, but I don't know. It's just really, really good music and good songs and just amazing stuff. And a lot of people don't realize, but if you ever seen that 70s show, the theme song to that 70s show is In the Street. And on the theme song there it's recorded by Cheap Trick, but that song's actually a Big Star song. So
Okay.
that's like a link to that people go, oh, okay, and you guys just did. Okay, yeah, all right, so I actually have heard Big Star. I didn't even know. And then number 5, and we'll leave it at 5 because I actually didn't write anything more down than 5.
Okay.
And these are probably the same 5 that I've probably talked about for many, many years anyway. And this can bring us back to hard rock and heavy music or whatever. Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti. It's another cop out because it's another double album, but that's fine. Physical Graffiti, when I first heard Physical Graffiti, it was like, and I had heard, and I went in chronological order essentially with that band. I would just, because it's easy, because their albums are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and then the House of the Holy. So then 5 is Physical Graffiti, and I remember opening the CD up, like hopping it in the boombox that I had, and it was like, holy crap! The first riff from Custard Pie, and it's probably the heaviest thing that I had because I hadn't gotten into Metallica or anything like that yet. And it probably was like that Physical Graffiti probably led me into harder music because it's like distorted, but the melodies are there and it's a little bit funky. It's just a perfect album. Cashmere, you can't touch that stuff. It's just I don't know. I don't have. I guess another album I don't have too many words for because it just flows so well. Trampled Underfoot's amazing. Okay, so that's what I got. There's
Well, a lot of
Dave
people-
Beckner's top 5.
A lot of people credit Zeppelin too for being like a forerunner of early metal. So
Oh, another thought I was going to throw out. The thing is for me, I don't probably listen to too much other metal. Is Black Sabbath is like the be all end all of metal. Like they wrote the book, they wrote the book, and then in their waning later 70s years, they took the book out into the street and kicked it around and burnt it, but. Because those last 2 Ozzy Black Sabbath albums are, in my opinion, really atrocious. I'm sure you'd have somebody who come in, and want to no, they're good, and I'm like, no, they're not good. So yeah, there's my piece, and I'm sticking to it.
all right.
I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not.
Okay, so what I really wanted to get you on here about, you seem to be very picky about the quality of your music in terms of the audio quality and the compression rate and all that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to give you a forum to kind of, school me and Dave a little bit about that, because honestly, like when I first got an iPod, I ripped all my CDs without even looking twice at what I was, at what bit rate I was ripping them at and what format. I didn't really know much about it at that point. And looking back, I'm kind of wishing maybe I paid more attention to that. But so in general, what's your take on sound quality? And there's all the arguments out there of I've read some articles and blogs and such about the arguments in the technical side of things is does it really make that so much of a difference? How much data is really lost? How much quality is really lost in compression? Are things better on vinyl, or CD, or can you have a high rate AAC file or WAV file or AAF file that's that's better than any MP3 file, no matter how well it's compressed and such. So what's your take in general?
Okay, well, I think first and foremost, vinyl absolutely sounds or can sound way better than a CD of the same material, just because vinyl actually is able to produce bass sounds way better than CD ever could. It just has a better dynamic range for bass. So that's why, a lot of times when you play vinyl, you just say, oh, like it just sounds heavier. You know, it just sounds thicker, and that, you know, just adds to like the richness of it. But of course, vinyl can be damaged that much more, and you know, it becomes dirty, and then you get surface noise, and then you have things like you get technical terms like intergroove distortion, and you know. So and vinyl obviously can be it's a hassle. You only get 20 minutes aside or whatever at best, you know. But if you're willing to deal with all of that, then it's absolutely the most rewarding experience, because there's also a certain thing about the process of listening to vinyl. You know, taking it out of the sleeve and like the giant album cover and the feelings that you get, like putting records on the player, like, you know, like it's like there's a like, and then, you know, yeah, I hate to use the term, but there's a certain hipness to it, and like having like a good vinyl collection. Now, you know, you can torrent to your heart's content, you know, have somebody's have like the entire Beatles catalog in like under 3 minutes, you know, you just have to work at that, you know, even on CD, you have to actually, you know, work and go buy these things and get into albums, as you had time for them. So, you know, you have one album a week or album every 2 weeks or whatever, you know. But, you know, now it's like whatever, like just download all of it, you know, just be completely overwhelmed and then, you know, move on to the next thing, just dabble. Yeah, and then there's something kind of disgusting about that.
I think a lot of people would agree with you or say similar things about, you know, a book versus an ebook and that visceral feeling about it.
Absolutely. And then the other thing, there's also a good comparison that I don't know if I don't think I came up with it. I'm not that brilliant. But the thing, you know, it's like the difference between film and Blu-ray. You know, obviously, you know, if you had a choice, like, wouldn't you like to have a movie theater, like, in your house, you know, and have, you know, be able to watch film, you know, because film looks, you know, of course, still looks better than even the best Blu-ray, but obviously that's just not feasible, and film is way more susceptible to being damaged than the Blu-ray. So that's the difference there between analog and digital. Analog, of course, is better, but analog is a total pain in the butt.
Going along with the vinyl thing for a second, though, why do you think that vinyl has had such a resurgence, though, even with the technology? I mean, do you think it's like a retro, like, nostalgia thing, or do you think there's like a legitimate pushback against the quality of digital music?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a pushback against the quality of digital music. For me, I always felt like I've still wanted an excuse to go buy something. I still need something to do. I still need to leave the house. You know, I still, you know, but, you know, in the last few years, I could probably count on one hand how many times I've bought a CD. You know, when in the last decade, you know, certainly, you know, would buy CDs. You know, I'd buy 5 or 6 at a time.
Yeah.
You know? But, you know, I think the last time I actually went to the store and bought a CD is I bought the new Cars album when it came out, and I came back, as opposed to using iTunes, drove all the way to the store, came back with it, put it in my computer, ripped it, and then suddenly there I just have like a piece of plastic. And the only reason I went to buy it is because I feel like, oh, well, at least I own something tangible, as opposed to just downloading, paying somebody for, you know, ones and zeros. At least I own like this, like, but, you know, that's silly. But if it was vinyl, you know, it's new vinyl, you can go buy the vinyl, and then you can get a digital download card with the vinyl. Yeah. And then you can get both anyway for, like, maybe it's just a few dollars more or whatever. That, you know, I think that has a lot to do with it. People still like, I certainly still like to buy things. And so vinyl's a way to do that, and a way to have, and, you know, yeah, certainly there's something, you know, there's something fun about it. And then even you see, like, I think it's a little crazy, you see people that, you know, have gotten back into cassettes.
That's definitely retro, though. I can't.
Yeah, there's some weird thing about that. And then, like, I got into it recently. I bought an 8-track player, and if Ian listens to this, my friend Ian, if he listens to this, he'll shoot me. But, you know, I think that's a little crazy too. Like, that's like hassle. Like that's like, there's some sort of insanity with the hassle of dealing with 8-tracks. But that's what people want to feel. You want to feel like, you know, you're actually involved with your music instead of just alphabetical order in a My Music folder through Windows. You know,
Yeah.
There's some, you just need, you need to have something to do. I think it's, No, okay. So to get back to the whole digital file thing you were asking me, well, I think it's an absolute shame that Apple has summarily just refused to support the FLAC format. And the FLAC format is it stands for Free Lossless Audio Codec, and I don't understand why they won't add iTunes support for it, except for the fact that the FLAC is basically the file sharer's choice. Because if you have FLAC files, and you play FLAC files from your computer, you're playing the exact same quality as if you own the compact disc. And obviously Apple doesn't want that to become like a predominant form, because then they're going to have to put everything back out in FLAC, because they know MP3s aren't as good as FLAC. But FLAC, of course, the file size is much larger. And obviously without the support, then it limits the ability of people to use it, because Apple's, iPods remain the main choice music player out there. And, they're fine, except for the fact that they're locked down and they're a little bit dumbing down, and there's other options out there, but it's a little bit positive and negative there, because the one I bought a Callow X7, and it's huge. It's 160 gigs, but it's certainly got its issues. It's not perfect. But when I had an iPod, I liked that too. But I certainly didn't like being limited to what file formats I could use with it. And then you were asking about how I thought about bit rates and things like that. Well, now, because hard drive space is not remotely a commodity. You can get a terabyte external hard drive for $100 or less. I mean, it's been a couple years since I bought one, so that might even be cheaper than that. So I think, obviously, the higher bitrate MP3, the better. I think the highest bitrate, 320 kbs. I think that's pretty close to the best sound quality. That's just about as close to the CD quality. You can't, and the file size is much smaller than FLAC. And if you had FLAC, you'd have to convert that to MP3 anyway to get it onto your iPod. And there's free programs that do that. There's a program called FOBAR 2000, FOBAR 2000. It's very handy. It's free, and that's the one I use to do all those things, to migrate stuff back and forth. And FLAC, you can create that with a program called Exact Audio Copy, in case anybody out there was curious about looking into that. So, but it takes a lot longer to do that. Now, when I first got into the whole digital revolution, as it were, maybe 6-7 years ago, and I had this miserable 2 weeks where I ripped every CD in. I started out and I just said, all right, well, I'm going to go with the middle road, and I went with 192. And for the most part, I still have all of it. I still have those MP3s in 192, and I'm fine with that. I think 192 is perfectly good just for general listening. And when you're in your car anyway, and you have the sound of the engine or whatever, nobody. You're certainly not in some sort of vacuum environment where you could possibly tell the difference between MP3s. But I maintain I can hear it, but it's almost it's a strange, indescribable sound difference to me. I think 128 sounds pretty bad, which used to be the original Apple standard.
Right.
When they first came out with it, 12 whatever, whenever they first launched iPods, 2000 maybe. But that was the original. What they said they used to say, that sounds exactly like a CD, and it absolutely doesn't. 128 is really bad to me. Then the third Dave always says he's like, oh no, whatever, 56K, that's fine, and I'm like, you're crazy. You drink more.
Wow.
Yeah, that's. I remember a couple times, I had a friend rip a CD for me. On a Windows Media, and it sounds like, especially in terms of percussion, hi-hat hits and things, it sounds like they're hitting a piece of tin, and that's just undeniable. I don't
think about it. It's the musical equivalent of a photo that was it's extremely digitized, that if you zoom in, that you can see the pixelation. That's essentially what you're hearing, is the the pixelation in audio form,
That's a great analogy.
So obviously, the fuller, the higher the bit rate is, then the higher the better the image of the actual CD is, because that's really what it's doing. Is it's making a copy. Well, it literally is making a copy of what's on that CD, and turning it back into the ones and zeros, but in a different way than from the native file that's actually on the compact disc. I only know as much as I need to know to get by, and if I come across something else, I just teach myself. It's always been, it's not like there's like some absolute guide for those kind of things. Like, I remember totally being thrown by MP3 tagging and how any of that stuff worked, and like totally being confused by file names and like, how Apple sorts files and stuff like that. And that's a little bit maddening, like when you have various artist CDs and things like that,
Do you still use an iPod, or are you using the Windows equivalent like you were?
Well, I had a Callow X5, and that died after like almost 5 years because I dropped it. And then I wound up borrowing Anthony's iPod for a while, and I used that for almost 2 years. And now I have a Callow X7, which is like touchscreen based, and it's 160 gigs, and it carries more music than I could possibly need at any given time, which is great because I never have to go, oh, I don't have that album with me. I actually have it in my pocket right now.
Just hypothetically speaking, because this is such a hot button issue, and the whole, legislative side of things seems to still have the,
SOPA and TIPA, the two bills that were shot down.
Right. Like they still seem to like. So they're thinking about it is very archaic to me, or very, very limited, and I'm just curious about, just like what's your take in general about like, digital, they call it piracy, but file sharing and that whole thing. Like, do you think that I think it's a legitimate discussion to have that more legislators need to have and hear, because that they see digital files as like copyrighted material, but then we were talking about owning like a product like a piece of vinyl or a CD.
I think the same people that are downloading to the extreme and getting music quote unquote illegally in digital format are spending their entertainment dollar, spending the same amount of entertainment dollars that they would anyway in other forms. Like, the money's just going elsewhere, to either concert tickets or to vinyl or DVDs, things you can't necessarily quote steal as easily, but because, and then considering the way the economy is, the trading of these files and people being able to hear this music, it's simply it's like a snowball thing. Like, the more music you get into, it's exponential. The more you're going to want to know. So obviously you're going to spend money on music no matter how they cut it, and you're probably spend the same amount of money that you would otherwise, but you still have access to way more stuff. And I don't think. And then the thing is, with the SOPA and TIPA, they already have laws in place that allow them to combat this stuff. It was awful funny to me that after SOPA and TIPA got shot down, then all of a sudden the feds go in and they shut down Mega Upload using, I forget what the name of the Digital Rights Media Act or whatever, from almost 10 years ago. They go in and they shut down Mega Upload, and they make a big public, thing about shutting that guy down and everything like that. After that,
you're a smart guy. What's the answer to this issue? Like, because it's so hard. There are some people that really feel like it's a crime to download music or files that you didn't pay for. Yet, other people feel that it's not. And I'm always curious on people's takes on that, because it's something that we haven't dealt with before, and it's something that I don't think there is really an answer to yet. So what do you think the answer is?
Well, I think it's a crime that you're limited to your options as to where to buy music now. I think it's kind of sad that if you want to buy an album, for most of America, you probably only have 3 main choices anymore, or maybe 4. Yeah. And at least for me, I know that your best options would be, first off, iTunes, and do I really, like, does Apple need any more money? I don't think Apple needs any more money. Yeah, and then you have, and then Best Buy, and Best Buy, I absolutely hate Best Buy, and like, I've never reacted with such, like, absolute, like, joy when I heard that they were closing 500 stores. I'm sorry about their employees, but Best Buy is looking for a fall. They're the most incompetent company that I've ever seen. They told my friend Ian when he went to purchase American Graffiti, a film directed by George Lucas, that the reason that they didn't have the Blu-ray on the shelf is because there wasn't any interest.
Wow.
The week it came out.
What?
Well, yeah. The week it came out on Blu-ray, they told him there wasn't any interest in that film.
I think Best Buy is indicative of, like, your pretty typical outlet that is designed for the casual, dare I say, like, ignorant shopper, people that are like when I worked at Circuit City, it was the same. We targeted the same people. Like, people went there to get whatever the latest release was. Every once in a while, you had somebody go, looking for something a little bit more nuanced or underground or whatever. But typically, people come in, they look at the front wall, like, here's all the latest releases. They buy Spider-Man 3 and then they leave. It's not designed for people like us that actually, like, have a real passion for something. Like, I don't think people that generally go into a store to buy something at Best Buy.
I think that's where they're failing now, because they have all this square footage and they could probably have they could have all that stock in, but they don't want to, because it's like, it's viewed as it's like too much to have on. You don't want to have all that. God forbid we have variety. We only want to offer what's going to sell in the short term. Yeah. We don't. We're not concerned.
It's like how, like, a lot of bookstores are failing, like Barnes and Noble. Right. They just stuff, like, whatever fluff books just came out.
And then it's a snowball effect, because then you wind up going to Amazon and buying and finding it and purchasing it, and then you don't even have to put pants on. You can do this in your underwear.
Wait, you're telling me that you don't go to Best Buy without pants?
I ought to start. And just make the point of saying, I could have stayed home in my underwear and got this for $5 cheaper, but I decided to come to Best Buy in my drawers.
Yeah.
So to go back, I guess the other two choices was, I said Apple, Best Buy, FYE.
I don't know anybody. I don't know if I've never known anybody that's ever bought anything at FYE.
I don't buy it. They're so insanely overpriced that they're just crazy. I never go there. I walk through there and I laugh. I scoff. Yeah. But I'm saying it's a place that actually has CDs. Oh, fourth option's Walmart. And you talk about appealing to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, exactly.
Look no further than Walmart. Because of
Walmart.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't really speak for CD selection at Walmart, but I'm sure I know what it's like. It's all greatest hits albums, and it's every the top 20 country albums that are currently on the shelf, and a bunch of MTV fare, that current MTV fare. Is there some sort of Lady Gaga thing going on with this podcast? Because I thought I'd just throw her name out there, because it seemed like she got a few mentions.
She's like infiltrated. I don't know how, but.
No, I can speak a little. I remember I was in Walmart once because I was buying a movie and I was getting some other toiletry stuff.
Right, I buy movies there.
And I went back to the CDs just because there was something that had come out recently that I forgot to download, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll go buy the CD for giggles and other words.
Right.
And I remember, like, being totally I gave up almost immediately because I looked at the shelf. And it was completely disorganized. And this was, like, in a pretty high-end area. Like, not that there's such thing as a high-end Walmart, but it wasn't like the inner city Walmart that I used to go to in Philly, or which you'd expect to be a disaster. But anyway, it was like disorganized, and they had like the latest country and gospel and pop and like wannabe hard rock, either Nickelback CD and then I actually, I tried to dig around a little bit, and it was so disorganized and just haphazard and, like out of stock that I was like, okay, it's not even worth my time, and I think most people that would go to a Best Buy or a Walmart to get music, if it's not on, like, it's not a new release shelf, they're not gonna go digging for it because they know they're probably not gonna find it. You know.
Amazing if I still buy CDs at stores anymore.
Yeah, I don't know many people that do, and you know, and it's unfortunate because like all the stores that we used to shop in, like Record and Tape Traders franchise in Maryland, is what, reduced to one store now.
Yeah,
And,
and then so by FYE.
sorry.
You asked me a question, and then I said, well, I think it's tragic that you can only really go buy CDs in these 4 places, and I don't know what the solution is there, but I think that's why people go and just download things because it's way more convenient than. And then I just think people wind up spending their money in other places in the entertainment industry anyway. So,
but you really think though that people are spending the same amount of money, that they're just not spending it in that way?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're giving money to, as far as you're still giving money to Warner Brothers, no matter how you cut it. Either I'm going to go buy the Black Sabbath album, which is on Warner. Go buy some Black Sabbath albums, which are on Warner. Or, hey, if I go watch the new Batman movie in the theater,
Yeah.
hey, that's also Warner. So no matter what, I've just spent $10 and it's going to the same company. So I don't know. And there's only what, 5 major labels anyway. It's all their money. I don't care how much complaining they do. They're still getting this for a lot of money. And they say, oh, the record industry's in the crapper or whatever. Well, put out some new albums that people actually will, can get behind and listen to instead of like pushing the same garbage all the time, like that you've done for the last 40 years, and expect people to completely fall for the mainstream thing all the time. It's rare anymore that you get something that's actually like is on the radio that is legitimately good. And what's on the radio is what they're trying to sell you. And they don't care if they're selling you crap. They're still selling it, and they're still making money. It doesn't matter to them if it's good. If you do buy it, then hey, whatever. And that's where the record industry is at. I mean, come on, Nickelback would never. I don't understand their success. I don't know who's listening to those albums because I don't know anybody who owns those albums. Except for my brother, but we won't talk about that.
I completely agree with you, and I think like the Best Buy model is very similar to the record company model, where
right.
they're looking at profit in the short term. Like they're trying to do whatever they can to get it while it's hot. Like, and the film industry is like that too. And I think that I can agree with you more that if they just gave people a reason, to want to stick with something and to want to follow something and to stay with it, that people would pay for it if they they really let artists and help them fund putting their.
They don't call them careers anymore. They don't care about that.
Yeah,
they care about.
Well, has anybody noticed that there is a lack of like one big movement, or you got some big pop songs like Lady Gaga, but you don't have like these big superstars like you used to, like the Beatles and the Stones, and
Well, that's because unfortunately rock is dead.
Yeah, right.
It's
in any genre, even pop. I mean, there's a few big stars, but it doesn't seem like it like used to be. I remember when we were kids, there was a few that were like everywhere. Spice Girls and the boy bands, and hip hop. You had certain artists were huge. You just don't see.
And you know what? I really think that the digital revolution or whatever really played a part in that, because I think everything has become really like segmented and I don't know what the word is for it, but everything's kind of everything is out there and everything is available, and kids aren't that like into it, and and I've mentioned this before. I mean, and being a teacher, I've noticed that kids aren't into music the way that we were, in the same ways that we were. Like kids still.
How could you value it if you didn't actually have to go and flip cheeseburgers for 8 hours to go buy a CD? How could you value something that you just took off the computer?
Right, and I think the record companies are responding to that, and like they don't even care anymore at all about helping bands produce or go through like a legitimate tour cycle. Like they want a single, they want it to be hot, they want it to hit hard, and then they know it's going to be gone really quickly. and then they're on to the next single. Like that's all they really need to focus on now, because it's so easy for, they probably make way more money than, or for kids to go to iTunes and download whatever's, the hot single on the main front page than they do for people like you and me that will pay $10 an album.
Once in a while.
You know what else is dead? As an art form, and I don't even think anybody's really necessarily aware of it, or particularly mourning, because the music video. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw like some major $1 million like event video that everybody knows about and everybody?
Madonna.
Super Bowl.
Well, no, that's not a music video. That was her performance there.
No. Remember the music video she did, like they released it at the same time, or like right before. I don't remember. And it was like really expensive and like super heavy special effects and like because
it's Madonna. You know what I mean? Like, she's still part of the old way of thinking.
No, I know, and I'm just messing with you. I agree with you.
Right, and does MTV even show music videos anymore? I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you the last time I watched MTV.
They show like Teen Mom.
And then they're like, oh, we're gonna go back and like get Mike Judge to make some more Beavis and Butthead episodes because it's like the last. Then we're just gonna make fun of ourselves and how much we suck. Yeah. Like, geez, what a bunch of jerks.
I think what's happening right now is that the internet has happened faster than anything has ever happened to humanity, and there's so many things changing so fast that industries which have a lot of especially industries that have been around for a long time just have a hard time kind of catching up and staying relevant, and that includes the record companies, any kind of entertainment industry, and the government. Obviously,
that includes regular people too. Like, I mean, I think all of us who are old enough to have lived in like this internet free world, like, it's a totally weird thing to like know that, like, via Facebook you can be in touch with almost anybody that you ever knew, like, theoretically, immediately. So it's a weird thing. And we're still like trying to adjust to this like internet world, especially while our earlier generations aren't particularly even used to it or need to deal with it. We have to deal with it because there's no other option. I don't think, like, unless I can't even imagine like not being on Facebook now. It's sad. It's a sad world.
I'm all on Facebook,
I'm trying really hard to not make any big judgments about any of this stuff yet, that like it's good or bad. I'm just trying to like let it be what it is, and try to just be aware of what's going on with it, because my kid, like my students who are only like half my age removed from this, but they don't know a world without this stuff. And my son will never even he won't even be close to knowing a world about without this stuff, and who knows what it's going to be like when he's old enough to be aware of it. I'm trying to keep a perspective here, because I think it's problematic to start putting too many judgments on it, because it's going to be the world that we live in, and like fighting it is going to be very difficult. But I think as long as you're like aware of like what the implications of it are, you can like navigate it without having too many battle scars, I guess.
We're going to play a song now from a project that me and my roommate Ben worked on. It's actually, oddly enough, after all of my ranting and raving about rock and roll and everything, it's actually a rap album that we did. It's a gangster fat white rap album that we did just as a joke, and all the songs are about food and being fat. So coming up is a track called FFL.
Yeah, there's a lot of MCs wanna fade me, but they all lumps in my gravy. Over biscuits, over eggs, over easy, over Reese's for sheezy. You don't wanna play me, I'm the daddy mac and cheese, this game of fat rap. I'm so wide the critics get tongue-tied trying to shame me. They hear me, but they can't seem to get their head round. Cause I make the fat boys look like Tony. Dr. Dre seem like a pediatrician spitting baloney. Cause it's alright for the kids be believing in gangsters. Living large, high in the hall with fly dancers. The truth can be too hefty or some for them to handle. We spitting rounds bigger than the BT channel. I'm a vandal, the kind your mama warned you about. No cash, no class, crack with trap cheese in his mouth. Set to snap, crackle, pop with any whackful cop who's trying to slide a button in my donut shop. My drawers on the power lines and they won't drop till I'm 12 feet under, pushing oak trees up. Got more chins in China, more rolls and Jabba the Hutt. I can stop world hunger with the meat in my butt. Who's fat, not you greasy? I saw you at the gym with your PT, running on the treadmill watching TV. Now you got the audacity to claim beef. You best get out my grill for option high heat. Greasy does it, nah, Greasy did it. So Greasy chose to act the fool to the Red Senate. You spit it, you quit it, you stole your mama's credit to buy a yoga mat and a gold gym membership. You used to be tighter than Twix bars, hitting the one star, ordering more than the restaurant could fix. But now your calories are burning, my man. I'm yearning, my man, for the days when you was large and unable to stay. Just another victim of metabolism, a depraved slave under the name of fat rap has been. So when we battle, it won't matter on the judge's decision, cause you be going TKO from the land of the living. Hefty hidden sums be spitting, rhythms not yet defined. And everybody wanna put their 2 cents in, but this ain't no charity drive. Cause ODB got the Sunset Beach and Red's got Riviera side. So either way you can't turn on sums to hefty, cause when you fat, yo, you're fat for life. 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 Fat for life.
Haters saying I can't rap. Well, I'm white and I'm fat. How's that for a handicap? Shut up to you, Rock and Mike. Not like you didn't get the invite. Damn, we know you fat enough and you eat more foul-ass stuff than me. And I'm Hefty Sums, the only one who still weighs a ton. Still packs a gap. Where I sit, I'm already sat. And I'm taking the pee out of the fat. Fat attack. 8 tracks can't hold us back. That's what I got that you lack. Gotta beat for Sums cause it's having fun while cops got you on the run. Son, the dishes are done, dude. Don't mean to be rude, but eat this.
Fat slave.
I'll go back to toasting Big Macs. Hey, ya outcast, you think you can outlast Rosa Parks suing your ass? And when she's done, she won't fuss in the back of the bus, cause she'll be busy counting your funds. Police, your song don't make no sense. Damn girl, just put up a fence. My milkshake's all better than yours. I went to Fuddruckers. Thought I'd curse you stupid suckers. No, I'm a ladies man. I watch my mouth. What comes out but not going in? Don't bother with where it's been. Oh God, get your brain out of the gutter. I'm talking food used and slather with butter. You rap about fly hose and skeezers. Who finds his Jimmy with tweezers? I ain't got time for that. Like a fork sticking in and I'm done chilling with half dozen Cinnabon.
The hefty hidden sums be spitting, rhythms not yet defined. And everybody wanna put their 2 cents in, but this ain't no charity drive. Cause ODB got the Sunset Beach and Red's got Riviera side. So either way you can't turn on sums to hefty, cause when you fat, yo, you're fat for life. 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 Welcome to the FFL. The only way in is through the Taco Bell. The only way out is straight through hell. So you best run for the border like a criminal. Lottie-dottie, I like the IHOP. I don't tip the waitress, just the syrup and the coffee. Cause I don't spread the wealth, just the butter and the jelly. And when they tell me say when, I just keep saying heavy. Go on, Hefty, show them how the big piggies eat. And give it to them real offbeat.
Sick of hearing Hefty talk about himself? I'll shut up once you stop taking rhymes off the shelf. Out of the book that I wrote, Luke. Greasy, you like Kraft, cheesy, what a joke. Drop the candy, you can have the little boy, that's what you really like. I ain't gonna rhyme with that, I'm just offbeat busted on spinning, grinning, bear it. If you say, put on a bib cause you about to wear it, start talking. Oh, you need to get your nerve on? I'm gonna get my swerve on. I'm creeping in, eating in the BSL with BLTs and Greasy P's. See, Greasy? I didn't sell out, just you, cause the market done fell out. On pansies, posers, and fast food fakes. Hey cops, start dragging the lake. Jack in the bakery for whole sheet cake to celebrate. Greasy, you be dead to me. Remember what you said to me? I love NH. I'm never coming back. I don't know why I leave your rhymes on my dope ass track sits on.
Fat for life.
first rapper on that song. That was Red Cent. Like I said, that's Ben, my actual roommate. And here he also has another. He had another band called Callow, and he recorded some songs here in Baltimore back maybe just about 10 years ago now. And here's a song called 3 More Years from Callow.
Truck pointed to the sky. I'll keep a leash upon my eyes to try to teach myself to stop before I start.
The third song from our little Pasadena theme, as it were, is a song called Great Scott by this legendary Pasadena high school band called Poplar Ridge back in the late 90s. I went to high school with them, so obviously Dan and Dave did too, but I don't actually remember if they ever saw them. Did you guys
At Battle of the Bands.
So this song is called Great Scott. Dan, the bass player, wrote it, and it was about, it's about Back to the Future and Atari or Nintendo. Enjoy!
Let me take you back to 1985.
helped him leave this town. And just sail away in your everyday to love again. He was trying to run away from the Libyans. The flux and capacitor charges sparked with radiation. Back in time, he found no time for evacuation. And what about Jennifer? Back at the clock tower. And what was going through his head? He was still in bed. Back in 1985. When Atari He-Man made the day fly by. When cartoons were cool and everything was fine. Back in 1985. Modified Dr. Dead and found his way back home. Drove his time machine right through a lightning bolt. Now back with Jennifer, he wasn't quite so blue. They drove around a hit-new truck, playing Huey Lewis down the news. And what was going through his head? He was still in bed. Now everything is good again. Thank God for the DeLorean. Back in 1985. When Atari He-Man made the day fly by. When cartoons were cool and everything was fine. Back in 1985. Back in 1985. Back in 1985. Now to 1990s, how will I survive?
The main website for this podcast is bumusicast.wordpress.com. Please leave us feedback there in the comments section, or please email us at breathingunderwater1@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at breathingunder, but I'm only really going to post when we have a new episode available. Other than that, there's not going to be much other web presence for now. I'm just trying to keep things simple. So if you need to contact us, WordPress or email is probably the best bet.
All views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the persons expressing them and have no relation to the companies, artists, or bands discussed.
In addition, the participants of this podcast claim no rights or ownership of the musical media, songs, sound clips, etc. presented in this podcast, which are solely for promotional purposes. If there are any issues with any content presented in this podcast, please contact us and we'd be happy to take care of it.
So please do not sue us or be a hater.
Thanks for listening.